This is Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague.
Steven, thank you so much for joining me today on Somewhere in the Skies, man.
Of course. I've got nowhere else to be.
That seems to be a running theme with a lot of guests and contributors lately. So I'm really happy to have you here. When I first saw your show over at the New York Post, I was like, this is the kind of stuff I love. I love seeing people tackle the topic of UFOs in such a serious manner. I mean, I feel like that ridicule factor is shedding, and we can definitely talk about that. But first and foremost, I gotta get the origin story from you. How did you first get interested in UFOs to begin with?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and I'm a 90s kid, so I... obviously, the X-Files was that was my thing in the 90s, was the X-Files. But if I remember correctly, I would go to the library when I was 10, 11 years old. And I remember renting Crash at Corona, which is about the Roswell crash.
Right, yep.
And I remember renting Bud Hopkins books, which, Bud Hopkins wrote a series on alien abductions, real cases of people claiming to have been abducted by aliens, and I remember being 10 or 11 and reading those books. So I think it started back then.
Wow, yeah, I think Crash at Corona was actually the first UFO book I got my hands on too at the library. So there's got to be something to that, man. Thank you, Stanton Friedman, first and foremost. Well, before we even get to the Basement Office, which is kind of the focus of the interview, this web series that you created, I know you had a UFO sighting, and if you're willing to talk about it, I would absolutely love for you to share that with our audience. It's strikingly similar to my own experience, so I want to hear it from your mouth first before I say anything. But yeah, would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, totally. So this is 2003. I was living in Utah. I was going to Brigham Young University at the time. And the LDS Church has a film studio, a couple huge sound stages. They film multi-million-dollar movies there. I was a PA, which is basically a grunt, coffee getter at the time, my beginning stages. And this one particular night, my job was to guard the door outside the sound stage. So make sure no one comes in while we're filming. So it's night, I'm standing outside of the sound stage forever. And, my mind was drifting. I was, bored, and something caught my eye. And so I looked up, and it was a triangle like this, not like, F-117 size, but more, a wider triangle. And it was going from south to north at a relatively slow speed. So at first I thought balloon, maybe a blimp, but the size of it didn't make sense for a blimp. There were low clouds that you could see the stars through the clouds, and they were very low and zipping across at high speed. And this sucker was under the clouds. It wasn't above the clouds. I could see it. So only about 1,000 feet up. And so as my mind is processing what I'm looking at, I go, oh, right, I was at an air show a couple years ago, and I saw the B-2s. That's pretty sweet. The Hill Air Force Base is right down the road. It's at B-2. And then as it got right above me and went past, it didn't make a single sound. Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. And that's when my emotions and adrenaline started flowing, because I'm used to that auditory connection to an airplane, right? My whole life, auditory connection to an airplane in the sky. And when my brain didn't receive that auditory connection, my brain started to go haywire a little bit, like something's wrong, something's not right. And my breathing, I remember my heart started pounding, and it was like a little bit of a panic. Mm-hmm. And it disappeared off into the horizon, and the red light, I remember the red light above the door went bing, which means or went off. The red light above the door went off, which means open the door, come in, to the films. So I kind of snapped out of it and, went in to do my job, and I was still in a daze, and I went up to my assistant director and I said, hey, I think I just saw a UFO. And they were like, yeah, whatever. And I was like, no, really, I'm being serious. I think I just did. And everybody's in their space. I didn't have anybody to talk to in that moment about my sighting. I think I told a handful of people, close to me at the time about it, but because they weren't there, they didn't have any emotional reaction to it. And then I just kind of like went on with my life until I started the basement office, where I got to, talk about it with Nick Pope. And at that moment, when I was talking about it with Nick Pope, it was like all those emotions just kind of like came back.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy how these things happen. So I do want to share full disclosure. I had a UFO sighting that was almost identical to what you're describing. Triangular formation. I didn't see a structure like a machine or anything. I just saw the, sort of that formation, white lights, and then like that hazy thing in the middle, sort of like the Belgian wave, I guess, is something I would compare it to. This was in upstate New York in 1995. So, I mean, this was a while ago. And you mentioned you were child of the 90s. I was listening to Green Day on a Discman when I saw mine. And I just remember the same thing, man. I took my headphones off because I saw this thing above me. And all I could hear was like, I was off a body of water. I was fishing. And all I could hear was like the water hitting the dock. And I could hear Green Day on my headphones like 20 feet away because I whipped the headphones off. And no noise whatsoever. So I don't know what to make of that, but the way you describe how you felt during it and kind of what was going on is so similar. And I don't know if it's because we saw the same thing or this is just a human reaction to these things. We don't know how to process it, but yeah, man, it was crazy when you relayed that story in your show. I was just like sitting there glued to it, like, oh my God, is he gonna say the same thing? That I experienced too. So I don't know. There's got to be something to it.
Let me ask you: the object you saw, what sort of speed would you estimate it was moving at?
Super slow. I mean, when I first saw it, it was right above me, just floating. It wasn't moving when I first saw it. It was just above me. I don't know. Okay. I don't know how many feet up or anything like that. But I was at a motel and my dad was inside. I could see him inside. So I start yelling for him, and he actually came out and saw the thing with me. So I had another witness. The funny thing is, though, when I yelled for him to come in, that's when it started moving over the water, super slow. And Canada was right on the other side of the St. Lawrence River in New York. And I just remember he came out, and it was coasting over the water and headed right towards Canada, and then disappeared. So I don't know, man. I don't know. It was just when you talked about that in your show, I had to bring it up because it changed my life, as I'm sure it did you, in ways we're probably still discovering. But yeah, crazy.
Part of my brain, as I said in the show, still wants to believe it was a human-made, top secret black project, something of that nature. As I said, Hill Air Force Base is driving distance from my sighting. Area 51 is directly to the west of Utah there. And so I was trying to triangulate, where could this thing could have come from. So part of my brain still is open to the fact that it was, some top secret human new technology thing. But it's the science, man. Like, to keep a large structure in the air at slow speed or no speed, you need an incredible amount of energy, and that energy makes noise.
Right.
And I didn't hear that noise. And so that means something new.
Yeah.
Something that we haven't seen before, that we don't know about. It means something fantastic.
That is the perfect word for it. I feel the same way. I feel like whatever I saw was probably man-made because it just seemed that way to me. I mean, I was 12 when I saw this. So, like, I didn't have that insight or that tenacity like you did to, like, go ask if, like, the Air Force was involved with this. Like, I was so scared at the time. The only person we really talked to was the motel owner. We're like, dude, what's happening? Is this something you guys see commonly here? Or, I don't know.
Did you take a photo of it?
No, no, I had nothing, man. Nothing.
Yeah, but did you think in your mind as you're observing this, oh, I must run and grab my camera?
No, no, I was...
No, exactly.
Exactly, man. And that is, we do hear that from a lot of witnesses. Like, you're so in the moment, and, no, I was frozen there. Like, I was petrified. So I think that's what kept me there more than anything. And, like, those things weren't going through my head. I wanted my dad. And that's why that was, like, my first reaction was, I wanted a parent to come protect me from whatever the hell this thing was. But that's a whole different story. But, I just found it fascinating, and I knew there had to be some sort of origin to your interest, so that's pretty cool. Well, you did mention the basement office. I definitely want to touch on this with you. What inspired you to create the basement office? I mean, was this something you'd always been working on? Did the New York Post come to you? How did this all come to be?
Yeah, the New York Post, I work at the New York Post. The New York Post came to me and said, hey, you know what? We've noticed on YouTube and on site, a lot of people are clicking and searching for UFO stories, especially lately, as you know, one can assume why, wonder why everyone's suddenly interested in UFOs. Maybe we should do a series, like a video series on UFOs. And I'm at work, I'm known as like the UFO guy. Like everyone kind of knows, oh, Steve knows about UFOs. Go ask him. And so they were like, pitch something. So I came up with the concept of basically, I didn't want to do a History Channel travel discovery type UFO show where it's like, in 1995, a group of citizens looked up the overproduced, like cinematic escapism, like infotainment. I didn't want to like beat people over the heads. I wanted to just, I just pictured Mulder's office from the X-Files.
Yeah.
Pictured a desk and me talking to experts and analyzing the facts. And anything that can't be proven or anything that has nothing to back it up, let's acknowledge that and move it to the side. And let's just focus on what we know and what we can prove. Because honestly, I think that's the scarier stuff. Not the conspiracy theories, but the cold hard facts. Like when you look at radar data and police audio or radio audio and, pilot and military and government testimony, that's the stuff where it starts to like blow your mind, So that was like the general concept. Two people at a desk talking about the facts about UFOs.
Yeah, it's the perfect pitch. I mean, you could tell by the amount of views you got on the series. Like, this is something people want, especially since the New York Times story broke about this, and we'll get into that. But you did mention Nick Pope. Now, this guy is the real-life Mulder, and he's a hero in the quote-unquote UFO field. So how did you get hooked up with this guy, and, how did that all come about?
Yeah, so originally, the idea I had was each episode I would have a different co-host. Like, each episode would have, like, a guest, and we emailed and sent invites out to people asking if they were interested. Nick was one of the first ones to respond that he was interested. We flew him out. And right off the bat, I was like, wait, no, he has to stick around for all the episodes. Because he was so great. Like, not just on and off camera, but super smart. And, like, our chemistry, like, you could tell, like, we bounced off each other really well. And I said, no, Nick has to be, like, the co-star of this show. And he agreed. He was like, great, let's do it. And so that was like a blessing. Like, really, like he helped make the show what it is.
Right. And for my listeners and viewers who don't know, this dude was the head of the MOD UFO desk. So, I mean, he was who people went to investigate these in terms of how the British dealt with this topic, which is an interesting correlation to how America deals with it as well. So, I mean, you picked the right guy, and hell, let's be honest, a British accent just ups the quality of everything, right? The elegance and the eloquence, I guess, is the right word.
Oh, totally. He adds a refined touch.
Right. Now, I think when you first started the series, you kind of caught up the viewers with what was going on. So this New York Times story breaks about a secret UFO program having gone on. The public didn't know about this. So I want to get your initial thoughts on this, Steven. Like, when this story broke, I don't know about you, but I was like dumbfounded. I've been studying UFOs since I was like 13 or 14 years old. And we all thought Project Blue Book was the last time that the government was investigating UFOs. So this comes out of nowhere, and like very few people knew about it, and it just exploded. So what did you think when this story first broke? Were you like, this is it? We're in disclosure now?
I distinctly remembering seeing the article and then going, no way. And then I read the little bit of the article. I was like, wait, this is the New York Times? And I scrolled back to confirm it was the New York Times. And I was like, no way. And Politico and then CNN. And I was just blown away that the top media companies were covering this, not just like as a quick one-off, but like extensive articles, like well-researched, well-interviewed articles. That was different, I think. And I think for those of us like already in the UFO world, in a way, it was more of a big deal. And I think your average layman was honestly, the people I talked to who weren't really into it, they were like, wait, what? Like, say that again. Like, yeah. The New York Times just like blew the lid off the Pentagon's UFO program. Here are 3 videos you can look at and watch. And people were just like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah. So in terms of those videos that were released as well, we got 3 videos: the gimbal, the Tic Tac, and the the Go Fast. Yeah. What's your favorite, man? I gotta ask, out of the 3, what was like the one you found most compelling?
Okay, so let me do 2 tiers. So first, I believe it's the Go Fast, where the thing, you can see the water underneath of it, and it's zipping super fast. And I love hearing the military men, hearing their audio as they're observing it in the moment, and their excitement and their adrenaline. Because these are guys that fly for a living. These are guys that observe fast things every day. And the fact that these guys are blown away by what they're looking at, it makes it more impactful. Because if it's blowing them away, then it must be something unique. Because that's their profession, I'm sure they're hard to impress when it comes to airplanes, Yeah. So that one, but the story behind the semi-boring 2004 Tic Tac video, because honestly, the 1 minute that's been released, it's just there. I mean, it's just a blob.
Right.
But the context of that blob, the story behind it, is just incredible. Like, it's still hard for me to wrap my brain around the true story behind it.
That is such a good point. I think this is where witness testimony is so important. We could have a million videos of things hanging in the sky or whatnot, but until we have context for what actually happened, I think that's where the meat of it is. We did get these videos, which, yeah, like you said, the Tic Tac one is pretty anticlimactic until, it shoots off right at the end. But how long are these videos? I don't think anyone in the public has that knowledge yet of what are we not seeing in the videos that was caught.
So in episode 1 of season 2, the new season of the Basement Office, we interview witnesses who were in the room and watched the raw footage of the Tic Tac video as it was happening. And they estimate anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes. So while there's 1 minute released online, there's actually like 9-10 minutes after that that hasn't been released. And, we learned in the last few months, the Navy admitted that they have classified slides, briefing slides on the Tic Tac. And they also said we have a classified video of the Tic Tac. So one has to assume, connect the dots, they have a longer video.
Someone's got it. Well, hopefully we'll get to see that someday. If not, it's amazing that we're still talking about the same damn video like almost 3 years later now, but that's how these things work. We'll take what we can get. And I know in your first episode as well, you talk about the best evidence that's out there. You know, you covered the Trent photos, the Brazil cases, you covered Chicago O'Hare, which is a case a lot of people don't talk about that often, which blows my mind. It's one of the best ones out there. So did any other cases really stick out to you as being like, wow, this is a smoking gun that I think kind of faded into obscurity, I guess?
Well, you bring up Chicago, and I am still amazed at that case, because it's one thing for one person to say, oh, I saw a flying saucer above the airport, right? But when you've got pilots, flight attendants, airport crewmen seeing this and reporting the same thing, a disc hovering above highly controlled, highly sensitive airspace, you have to start wondering what the heck were they looking at. And those are the cases that I gravitate towards, where there's FAA tapes, FAA transcripts, pilot audio, the cases that we cover in the basement office, where you hear the pilots in the cockpit observing UFOs, and in one case the pilot calls it a UFO, and these things are zipping like over their plane. They're almost ducking in the cockpit as this thing zips over. And it's like, is this where we're at, where we just kind of have to hope, something doesn't hit your plane? I mean, and you learn these aren't isolated cases. The cases of UFOs, unidentified flying objects, breaking into sensitive airspace, flying under, above, in front of our pilots. The Navy just called it a safety hazard. The Navy Joe Gradisher with the Navy recently just called a safety hazard. Okay, so what are you doing about it, man?
That is such a good point, Steven. I mean, ATIP, the secret Pentagon program, their sort of investigation was all based on a national security threat. Like, are these UFOs a threat to us? And I think you're right. When they're zipping past the pilots, or they don't know what to do about them, do I fire at this thing? Do I leave? Like, what do I do? The threat almost seems more from us in terms of, look at cases like the Tehran incident of 1976. A pilot almost died trying to shoot at a UFO. And there are other cases where this has happened, where pilots have died trying to chase an unidentified flying object. So I do wonder, is the threat more with how we respond to these things, and that there is no protocol for it,
Yeah, and I start off by saying to a lot of folks, I'm not here to convince you that what this pilot saw that zipped over his plane is an alien. I'm here to convince you that he saw something unidentified. Neither he, the FAA, the military, the people who are supposed to know, don't know. That's all I want to convince you, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
The people that are supposed to protect American airspace, keep it safe, keep it clear of hostile or foreign or unidentified objects, a lot's slipping through their fingers right now.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, and you covered so many cases, and you had audio in there that I'd never heard before. Some of them were really, really eerie to hear. And another one of the things you talk about in the show, you showed video, you had audio from the base commander. This was the Rendlesham Forest incident. Like, the motherlode of, it's Britain's Roswell, basically. Now, had you known about this case prior to covering it with Nick on the show?
I had not known the deep nitty-gritty details. I knew it was Air Force. I knew it was a triangle that they had seen. Basically, so I knew Colonel Holt's story. Peniston's story I hadn't really heard about. I knew like the brass tacks of what happened in Rendlesham, but not the other stuff.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to touch on that other stuff with you. I mean, so we have a case, 1980, UFOs seen over 2 joint military bases. Now we've come to learn from the base commander that nuclear weapons were being housed on the base without Britain's knowledge, and the UFOs affected the nuclear... It's insane. it's insane about everything that happened with this case. But one thing you covered in your show, which is one of the big game changers, I think, in this case, is the effects on the officers who saw this, who experienced it. And we're talking the John Burroughs story. Now, this guy had physical ailments occur after this, right?
Yes. So, oh my gosh, this blew me away. You can actually see my response in the episode, that because of their interaction, proximity to the object that they saw, they claimed that they received, physical ailments from that radiation, whatever it may be. They were exposed to something. Now, that may sound like science fiction, but when medical records come up, U.S. senators get involved, health insurance companies get involved, and when you're able to read with your own eyes, yes, they did, receive trace amounts of radiation from this object, and yes, we are going to cover your healthcare costs because of that. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that there was an official acknowledgement of their interaction, of the military's interaction with a UFO. And because of that, Air Force officers were hurt because of that. And you're just like, okay, so that's pretty solid proof, They didn't even work around okay, let's put something else in writing, okay, in the line of duty, or something like that. It was because of your encounter at Rendlesham in 1980, we acknowledge this happened to you and that you did get this ailment and we're going to help you pay for it. Wow.
It's crazy, man. Well, you talk about proof. Now, there's another key player in this case, Jim Peniston, who was with John Burroughs during one of these events. And this is where things get a little murky, I think, for a lot of people who use this case to depend on in terms of documentation, how many people were involved. We have so many officers who've come forward to say that they experienced this. Jim Peniston, he says that he touched the craft. A code of some sort was downloaded into his brain, and he's trying to decipher this. Now, this is where it gets really science fiction-y, for me at least. I struggle with this one, man. So I'd love to hear, what do you think about, you go from John Burroughs, senators fighting to get him health coverage for a life-threatening ailment from a UFO event, to someone saying they now have a binary code downloaded into their brain. So what do you make of this juxtaposition there with this case?
Yeah, okay, so if you notice, in the basement office, we had Burroughs and Holt in their own episode, and then we had a whole episode dedicated to Peniston. And we started that episode with a disclaimer of look, there is basically no hard evidence to support this story. We can't show you a document, a photo, video, audio, anything to prove that what he's saying is real, other than the fact that yes, he was there. He was there. We know that. Yes, we have the document of the statement he gave. That happened. But we were going to let him tell his story. Because he was there. It's documented. He saw something. We've got two credible witnesses that were in the same place. So let's let him tell a story. But beyond that, it's a great story. But one you can't prove. But one you shouldn't shut out either. You want to be sensitive, and be tell me your story. You don't want to cut off people because oh, show me a photo, because I don't have a photo of my sighting, I don't have physical proof to prove to you that I actually saw what I saw, but I know I did. But I still want to tell my story. And so Peniston, okay, let's hear your story. And I struggle with it as well. I mean, it would make a great movie.
That's true. And I think there's a television series about Rendlesham with Lawrence Fishburne connected or something. I don't know if it's still happening, but this was pre-COVID-19 and everything. So God knows if we're ever going to see this project come to fruition, but yeah.
Let me just say this about Rendlesham. He claims he touched this craft, he saw a flash of light, and then images. And he claims actually later on at his home, these images started playing almost like a hologram in front of his eyes, and he wrote these images down. Now, that sounds like a movie on the Sci-Fi Channel, but I start to observe, I'm like, does any technology exist today that we can see where something can be beamed into the human brain? And it turns out there is. The military has a audio wave. It's basically like a gun. This is real. That they can beam audio or voices to your head. It's if you Google this exists. The patent exists. It's out there. There's a ray, an invisible like ray gun, it actually looks like a satellite dish, and they can beam audio to where you would hear it in your head. And so I'm like, okay, I'm looking at a patent. I'm looking at the report that this exists. This exists. Okay, so technology to beam something into someone's head exists. Okay, so in that sense, his story becomes a little bit less crazy in that the technology to do that in an infant stage exists.
That's a good point, man. I mean, until it's every physicist or scientist who come out with these wacky theories, they're crazy until it's proven real. And I think that's the kind of world we live in now, where a lot of these things we thought would never happen are happening. And they've been happening for a while. So I agree with you. You know, Rendlesham remains one of the most credible UFO cases out there. All the witnesses, most of them are still alive that we can talk to, which makes it different, you know, from the Roswells and stuff like that. So,
yes.
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, the Rendlesham has been attacked for being a hoax, a prank, etc. And I get that. As a possibility, but Colonel Holt, I found him credible. We have the evidence of the audio of him out investigating, and there's no way around the fact that sounds legit, you know. So you have to be open to the possibility that it could be a hoax, embellished, exaggerated, but the evidence that exists. The radiation, like, it's something happened in those woods, man. You know,
I'm with you on that. I think right now I'm gonna play a little bit of that audio for the audience to hear. It's so eerie. So yeah, I'm gonna play that right now.
305. We see strange strobe-like flashes to the rather sporadic, but there's definitely something, some kind of phenomenon. 305 at about 10 degrees. Horizon directly north, we've got two strange objects, half-moon shape, dancing about with colored lights on them. But gets to be about 5 to 10 miles out, maybe less. The half-moons have now turned into full circles. As though there was an eclipse or something there for a minute or two. 0315, now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones to the north are moving, one's moving away from us. Moving out fast.
This one on the right heading away too.
Yeah, we're both heading north. Hey, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal. 330 or 0330, and the objects are still in the sky, although the one to the south looks like it's losing a little bit of altitude. We're turning around and heading back toward the base. The object to the south is still beaming down lights to the ground. 0400 hours, one object still hovering over Woodbridge Base at about 5 to 10 degrees off the horizon, still moving erratic and similar lights and beaming down this area.
Yeah, so that audio is pretty freaky. But I want to move on to some more recent videos, actually, with you, Steven. Now, this is one you brought to me that I had never seen before. So I feel like I'm failing as a quote-unquote ufologist. But yeah, tell us a little about this case out of Utah that you found.
Okay, so there's this drone footage, I believe, out of Beaver, Utah, from a few years back from a video film company. They were from what I understand, testing a new drone or shooting footage of their drone of like landscapes and stuff. And they were out in the plains near the mountain ranges in Beaver, Utah, and filmed a bunch of stuff. They come back weeks later. They're going through the footage and they see something zip by the camera. And they're like, wait, was that a bird or what was that? They play it back and they keep playing it back and looking at it, and it gets weirder every time they look at it. And so they posted the clip, and people, including myself, really started looking at it, frame by frame. Was this a bird? Was this a bug? Yeah, okay, yeah, it was a bird. It looks like a seagull, something like that. But then you watch it again, and you're like, wait, is that coming out from behind the mountain? It looks like it comes down through the valley and then turns and zips past the camera. And you keep watching, and you're like, yeah. And then some crazy people, and I give it like hats off to them. They went through and analyzed distance, size. So they went through, they found the exact location of where this was, the size of the trees, the size of the distance between the drone and the tree. And you can watch these videos online where they've drawn lines. This equals 25 feet. This equals this much. The height of the mountain. We know this mountain is this high. So, and they triangulate, speed, height, and distance into this huge mathematical thing. And when the math and the science is placed on screen, this sucker, a bird or bug, that suddenly goes away. And you're like, okay, the size does change. It gets bigger as it approaches. Okay, so what size does it change? We can estimate its speed now. And wow, it's like moving at like Mach 8, Mach 9. So what is this thing? And when you really look at this thing, man, it looks like tack.
Yeah.
In my view, it looks like a white little pill moving. And okay, so is it CGI? Is some random video film company that shoots drone footage professionally, did they decide we need some viral attention? Let's put in a UFO. Why would you, I don't know, why would you put something in that at first looks like a bird or a bug that isn't all immediately like, whoa, Right. So it's subtle. So I'm open to that because a lot of CGI crap exists out there. Almost every day I see a new CGI UFO on Twitter. I'm like, oh, God damn it. Just stop this. It's just murkying the waters. But this case fascinates me because the witnesses, the sources, they seem legit. The science behind it seems legit. And the speed, when you zoom in, you're able to. It's in super HD, this footage. When you zoom in, when it comes out of the mountain range, you can see it pivot. It pivots and then zips. And it matches when you listen to the eyewitness testimony of the Nimitz encounter and how that object was, how it was moving and the speed at which it would move. Incredible speeds and the way it would pivot and turn and zip. I just kept connecting those two, and that's what I see in that footage, which I think went mostly underreported because of just how subtle it is and how you can dismiss it. But there is a video, and if you can find it, just to show a clip of how they've put the math and science on distance and speed of everything that you're looking at, and there's no way to deny that sucker isn't something flying in front of the lens like this. Its size changes as it approaches, and that's like amazing to me.
Yeah.
I love that footage.
I when you brought it to me, I was really, I'm always, hesitant about UFO videos, but when I saw it, my initial reaction was like, it's a bug. It's a bug. But then right. I did exactly what you said, and I went back and did it frame by frame, and you can literally see this thing coming from like behind the mountain range, which is crazy. I'm actually, I'll play the video right now so people, they have some context for this and get their thoughts on it too. So yeah, let's play that right now.
Awesome.
Boom, we'll do that. Awesome. Yeah, so that one, man, I'm so happy you brought it to me. I hope people will look into it more. And the fact that these guys who shot the drone footage came forward with this and said, no, like, this wasn't like a bug, a bird. We see the shit all the time. So, like, that's enough for me to be like, there's something to this.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
Well, underreported was a good way to put it. Now, this next one for me is the most underreported UFO video to date. I mean, this thing blows the Tic Tac, the Go Fast out of the water, in my personal opinion. And I'm just going to read it here because it's a little convoluted, but this came from, supposedly, came from a Homeland Security video. The object in the video, it was captured on thermal imaging. Let's see, what else? This happened at the Rafael Hernandez Airport in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, of all places. So yeah, man, this one is... What do you make of it? Had you heard about this case before? Yeah, what do you think?
Okay, so I had heard about it. I had seen what I thought was the full video, but I apparently just saw a clip before. I didn't know the nitty-gritty details. But let me just walk you through this video a little bit.
Yeah,
because the thing that's shocking is it apparently breaks airspace over the Rafael Hernandez Airport, which is, run by the FAA. So it flies over an official airport, the Rafael Hernandez Airport. And because it breaks through the airspace, is not responding to radio, doesn't have a transponder, planes on the ground are delayed. The airport shuts down because something's in our airspace. It's not responding to radio. I mean, that's creepy, and that's scary, and that's dangerous. It leaves the Rafael Hernandez airspace. Apparently, at this point, we have a Department of Homeland Security border protection plane filming it move. And the part that I didn't know about this video that you can clearly see at the end is that this sucker goes into the ocean. And I was like, no way does this happen. And then
he comes back out.
Comes back up.
I'm sorry to steal your thunder there, man. I got too excited.
Comes back up. And, like, oh my God. So that it becomes a USO, unidentified submerged object at that point, and that's crazy. Now you have to think, okay, maybe it's a top secret military experimental drone or flying torpedo. We know these things exist. Maybe the Navy is experimenting because they're open about doing this anyway. Transmedium transportation. Dating back to the 40s, you read news reports about the Navy wanting a flying submarine. So could it be, something like that? Sure. But why is the military endangering their own, airspace of, commercial and, public airliners? Like, I could see them experimenting, but why are you causing such a hassle and safety hazard for your own citizens? In the process, there's a better, safer way to do it that could avoid, planes that are full of 150 people, So you gotta juggle that. Also, you have to be open to the fact that the video is completely fake. I lean towards it's not. It seems to have all the hallmarks, legitimacy. This is a 150. There is. You can read it online. You sent it to me. There's a 159-page analysis.
Holy shit.
Of the art here itself, and they go through. There are here acknowledgments. There are letters here, FOIA letters to the Department of the Air Force. There's documentation here that the video is real. The object itself is estimated to actually not be that large, 5 feet, maybe 7 feet. The speed of this object is also caught my eye as not very fast, 80 to 100 miles an hour.
Okay.
When it strikes the water, it's estimated to hit the water at 110 miles an hour. Now, if you're in your car, your Prius, you're driving along, and you hit a body of water at 109 miles an hour, it's going to mess your car up. Like, it's essentially like hitting a wall, essentially. I mean, things are going to break, fly off, debris. But the fact that this thing is observed hitting the water at 109 miles an hour, and then bloop, like coming back and being cool and like moving and still functioning, that's okay. That's interesting, you know? Like, we don't, something you see every day.
Yeah, that's such a good point, man. And even at the end of the video, we see that when it comes out of the water, it either breaks into two objects or it meets up with something else, which is like, right. I don't understand how this video could not be bigger than it is. I don't know. It faded, and I don't know how that could happen.
Yeah, you see, it looks like it kind of goes like this, and two functioning, moving, interacting parts. Now, in the report that I just brought up, they offer the possible explanation that what we're seeing is a heat register reflection off the water. Because it's so close to the water, the heat register is reflecting through the infrared camera. So it's a mirage of two images, but they're not able to prove that that's exactly what we're seeing. So the possibility is open that either it meets up with a second object or it actually splits into two objects. Now, alone, this case is confusing, but when you look at other cases, the Nimitz included, where they observed a USO on top of a UFO, and you look at other cases of UFOs flying near bodies of water, above bodies of water, or into bodies of water, there are a lot of them, and it seems to mimic what we're seeing in this video, supposedly from the government. In season 2 of The Basement Office, we have a whole episode dedicated to USOs.
Oh, cool. So you're tackling that. You have to. I mean, this is such an underreported part of ufology or UFO history that doesn't get covered often. There's maybe 1 or 2 books on it, but these reports are almost more astounding. I mean, I can think of the Shag Harbor incident being one. My UFO incident happened over a body of water.
Right.
Yeah, it's more common than I think people think.
It blew me. So in episode 2 of season 1, which is about flying saucers, Nick blew my mind because we were analyzing the Brazilian Navy saucers, and he said, "Hey, just so you know, this isn't like isolated. Like UFOs seen above or in bodies of water, they're called USOs, and it's like a thing." And I was like, "Wait, what?
Yeah,
you're in the water now?" And the more I read about it, I was like, "Holy crap! Like water is playing a key role, it seems, in a lot of sightings. I don't know what that is, but it does."
Yeah, and it's worth looking at. I think it's a very important part of all this that a lot of people don't understand. And you did mention the Tic Tac event. Now we have Commander Fravor, the pilot who first went up and intercepted this object, saying there was something in the water 50 times bigger than the Tic Tac that he saw. And the water below was like bubbling. Something was going on.
It was the water the thing was under the water, and according to this official Navy pilot testimony, the top of the water was disturbed. It was being disturbed in almost white froth, and one of the smaller Tic Tacs was hovering, zipping directly above this unidentified submerged object.
Yeah. So what is that? You know, I mean, was it controlling the Tic Tac? We also know that there was more than one Tic Tac. Again, we're seeing such a condensed, small version of the video where the radar operators are saying they were tracking tons of these things.
Yeah. They were a lot of radar registries were happening of multiple objects. Now, you know, I'm open to the possibility that what happened in 2004 was a top secret exercise where, unbeknownst to the Navy, they were kept in the dark. Hey, let's send in our new awesome shit, and let's see how our current modern pilots react to it. Let's see if we can evade radar. Let's see if we can evade flight patterns. Let's see how, you know, a potential enemy modern fighter unit would react to our new special awesome thing, and keep these guys in the dark about it, because so we can observe them react in real time. Maybe it was that kind of thing, but when you've got astrophysicists and top minds analyzing the Tic Tacs and saying these suckers are moving at speeds that no human could survive in, then you got to start going like, okay, then what?
Then what? Well, and my only argument to that, Stephen, is I've had the actual radar operator tell me, hell no. Another branch of the military isn't going to test something in our airspace during training exercises. That would be preposterous. It would be so dangerous. I understand, like, the element of surprise and not knowing would be the best way to test these pilots and the Navy overall. Like, send it in and see how they react to these things. But again, we go back to that is a huge threat to our pilots. Even if it was a test, do we think that they would put the pilots in harm's way just to see how they would react to something like this? I don't know. Maybe they would. Maybe they wouldn't. I don't know.
Yeah, there is testimony that one of the Tic Tacs was approaching one of the F-18s, and the pilot was saying, it's engaging me. Like, basically, this thing is engaging me as a threat. That's not something to take lightly, man. Like, this is our military. These are our men and women in uniform who put their lives on the line, and when they feel like something is engaging them, then that's serious business. Like, we need to take it seriously. We can't just dismiss it as like, oh, okay, that was just, a seagull.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more, man. Well, in terms of this new age we live in with UFOs, now we have Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy working with the former ATIP director on looking at this stuff, and it's gone mainstream like never before. Disclosure. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Do you think that's a thing? Will the government ever admit that UFOs exist? Will they ever come forward and say what they know about it? What do you think on this word disclosure?
Okay, okay. I think the government and military have already admitted UFOs are real. I mean, by definition, when you've got the Department of the Navy saying what you're seeing in these videos is unidentified aerial phenomenon, they're releasing statements saying these are UFOs. And now they're not saying these are aliens. Yeah. They're not saying extraterrestrial biological entities are flying these things. They're saying these are UFOs. We're the military, and we don't know. So I think that's happened. Disclosure. Now I think what you're getting at is that some people think or opine that we are in a time where the government and the military and the people that were in the shadows are finally dropping the curtain a little bit and saying, like, okay, little by little, let's let the public know what's going on. Not all at once, but just little by little, this slow drip of information. And, dude, I don't know. I do know that if that was true, that theory was true, that yes, the government and military has known and knows, and for some reason we need to let the public in on some of this. This is probably how they would do it. Little by little, every 4 or 5 months something drops, because you can't just dump decades, if not centuries, of information into the general public's lap and say, here you go, It's right. It's like your body going into shock when you enter cold water. Like, how would we continue with society if we knew that everything would change? I mean, religion, science, humanity, history, everything would change if they just, boom, here's everything, Yeah. Pandemonium, in my opinion. Yeah. Only if they're alien, though. If the end game of all of this, what you want to call disclosure, ends in alien or interdimensional, then yeah, religion, history books. A lot of things are going to be seen differently, are going to be flipped on their head a little bit. I'm of the opinion that where we are now, most people are going to go, whoa, that's awesome.
You're right. I think we don't give humanity credit sometimes.
Yeah. I think in the 90s, if you watch a lot of sci-fi in the 90s, the way people, entertainers, writers, artists thought people would react, you see pandemonium in the streets of New York, like people running around and losing their minds. And I think now, years later, I think most people would be seen like, oh, sweet, let me get an Instagram of this, you know? Like I think people's minds, the way of thinking has changed. And honestly, I think that's the key. Let's just pretend that I believe wholeheartedly in such a thing as alien UFOs. Let me entertain that. I think beyond physical evidence, being able to look up in the sky and seeing, let's say, a saucer, and then the government saying, yes, Steve, what you are indeed looking at is an alien UFO from another galaxy. On top of that, it's how my brain works. Because I think about how my brain worked when I saw my UFO, and it was wonder and panic, kind of like when Elliot first meets E.T. in the cornfield. That's how it was. But since then, I don't look back at that memory with panic anymore. I look back with wonder and something I can't really put my finger on, to be honest with you. And to Nick Pope in the episode, I said something personal, something that feels personal, but it's an emotional thought. It's I don't know. I know there are people like Steve Greer who talk about like the mind and emotional and spiritual connections. And if I'm just like spitballing here, that's something that needs to be refined for that connection to really happen.
That's a good point. Yeah, there seems to be this movement as of late of CE5, I guess they call it, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where humans using whatever, consciousness, something, to initiate contact with these UFOs, no matter what they are, interdimensional, alien, whatever, military, using the mind to try to communicate with these things, which is, it's interesting. It's something I am just learning about and looking at, but yeah, maybe this does have a lot more to do with us than it does anything out there. I don't know.
I mean, right now, it sounds like you and I are writing the next Spielberg movie. I mean, at the way we discuss it, I mean, and in a lot of ways, it's still science fiction because there's little to no science fact behind it. And as such, as a journalist, a documentary filmmaker, I have to put that stuff on the back burner and say, okay, if and when I'll be willing to bring this back up. But until then, like, let's just focus on what we know because that's the easiest stuff to digest and observe.
Yeah, that is a really good point, man. And I think that's what you're doing with the Basement Office. So you mentioned USOs. Is there anything else you can tease to us about Season 2 and what you're going to be looking at? Anything you'd be willing to share?
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay. I won't tell you the topic of this episode, but we tackle something that has no evidence really.
Okay.
We talk about it for 30 minutes in one episode. But we talk about it from a pop culture point of view. Okay, I'll give you one clue of another episode. Wunderwaff.
All right. I'm going to leave the audience with that. Yeah, whoa. I love it, man. I love it. Well, Steven, where can we find everything you're up to, man? When can we expect Basement Office?
Basement Office right now is on hold during, quarantine and coronavirus lockdown for a multitude of reasons. I work in news, and the news of the day right now is not UFOs. So that's one side, and the other side is we just got to production wise. If we're working on one thing, we can't obviously work on another. So when this all dies down, so I don't want to overpromise, but 2-3 weeks from now, I'm hoping F1 slips out there. But be patient, everyone. It's coming, and it's awesome. Like, I love it. Like, season 2 is the bomb. I just can't wait for you guys to see it. For my stuff, like my personal stuff that I work on, you go to stevengreenstreet.com. Basically everything that I've worked on, including the basement office, is there.
Awesome, man. Well, I mean, your passion and excitement alone is what I think we need in this topic. It often lacks that because we don't have answers, and we don't have that one case that's going to break the whole thing open. But I'm sure you could agree, if one of these UFO cases is authentic and is, let's say, alien, that's enough for us to rest on, is that one case. So, dude, I hope you keep doing this. It's invigorating. It's exciting. It keeps me going. And, thank you so much for joining me on Somewhere in the Skies.
And of course, man, thank you for having me.